So this I am planting. The shoot was bleeding. Antibiotics are going to be a thing of the past. I hear you. It's not time. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I've got a couple things that I'm going to do today before the rain. We're getting a decent storm here. Nothing bad, but it's definitely gonna rain. And I need to get my spring garden started. I also have a goat in the barn with a pretty darn bad hoof injury. It's like nothing that I've ever seen before, and I'm having to treat her. So we're gonna go over that, as well as discussing some reasons why the antibiotics being removed from over the counter for livestock producers, why I feel like that's a really big deal and a really bad snowball potentially. So if you're noticing the row of dead things, or the 2 rows of dead things behind me, that happened in that Arctic blast, that really crazy freeze that we had recently. And today the high is going to be 68. So it's been quite the whiplash of weather. And normally January is not this warm. I don't know. We've only lived here. This will be our 4th winter that we've been here. And I've not seen January be this warm before. So this year, as far as the garden goes, I have decided that I'm only going to grow things that I can't readily purchase at the local store that we shop at every week. We shop at a Amish market, and there's not always fresh produce there, but they usually will reliably have things like garlic, which I did plant because I do have some elephant garlic, and I use garlic a lot, so I don't know, why not? It's also really good to interplant along a lot of other plants, and it's super low maintenance. So I do have garlic going, but I'm not going to be planting potatoes. I'm not going to be planting onions, and I'm not going to be planting carrots. And there also are quite a few lettuces that I can purchase there regularly at really good prices. So those things are kind of off the table. I'm going to try to focus on things that I can't really get, or if I wanted to get, I'd have to travel pretty far for. So the spring garden is going to include all of these are frost tolerant to a degree. They're not going to handle an Arctic blast, but hopefully we won't see that again. So I'm going to be starting out with something that I didn't grow last year, but I have grown in years past and I have loved, is this yodfa broccoli. Last year I grew broccoli rabe, and that is quite bitter. We're having a really hard time integrating that into our meals where we're really enjoying it. I am trying to get through it because I grew it and I preserved it, but this yodfa broccoli is really sweet. It tastes a lot like asparagus, and broccoli had a baby, but also a very sweet baby. And so I am really excited to get some of this going, because where sometimes it's hard to get real actual broccoli to come to a head for me, this stuff is kind of a no-brainer and a little bit of a fail-safe, just in case the broccoli that I'm planting does what it usually does and bolts. Last year I think I grew gypsy hybrid broccoli according to my notes, but I do have this variety of broccoli, Waltham 29, and I think I have tried to grow this in the past. I can't remember exactly what happened, but we're going to attempt to get this to come to a head. One of the issues with broccoli and other heading types of brassicas is our summers just kind of hit us like a ton of bricks, and if a brassica is exposed to too much heat for too long, it just triggers them to go to seed. And so the seed head that it would have developed, that nice beautiful head, actually just turns into a whole bunch of flowers, and the plant is quite bitter, and that's not really what I'm after. Like, I've harvested many seeds over the years from my plants doing that, but I really want them to come to a head. I have had great success even in the heat with getting this purple broccoli to come to a head. It's actually, it says purple of Sicily cauliflower. To me, it has the taste and texture more like broccoli, so that's kind of what I've determined to call it, and that is how I use it. I roast it just like we roast broccoli. So this I am planting. I also had really awesome success with this cabbage variety. Last year, it handled the heat really well and seemed really resistant to cabbage loopers. We got really awesome huge heads, and we're hoping to do that again. And then last but not least, I have 2 different varieties of kale. This dinosaur kale, or Toscana kale is really a favorite of my kids, and then I really like this pop of color and the texture of the scarlet kale. So we've got all of that happening. I also did set aside some of these shallots. I've grown shallots in the past, and shallots, they're just a different flavor than onions. They're a lot more mild, and there's a lot of recipes that I make that call for shallots, and I'm out. So I think I'm going to start a few of these as well. I'm going to be starting out with planting my seedlings in these smaller cell trays. They're 1 inch by 1 inch by about 2 inches deep, and the plants can really only live in this space for about a month. One of the reasons that I like to start my plants in small trays like this is I can start a whole bunch at once, and it takes up very little light space in my house. So because these things are frost tolerant, I could put them in these cell trays and probably leave them in this greenhouse, and they would do okay, but the cold is going to make them grow slower. The shorter days of winter are going to make them grow slower, and I really want to give them a good head start, so I am going to put them under LED lights in my warm house. We actually need to go find a bucket before we plant these seeds. Hey, Bo. Thank you. So when starting seeds, I like to fill the trays halfway up with like a soil that has nutrition in it, a potting soil. I have a garden soil over here, and that's going to be just fine. And then the top half, I like to put in a seed starting mix. The seed starting mix is really fine, and it's able to make really good contact with the super small seeds and ensure that they get the best chance at germination. These seed starting mix really don't have any nutrition in them, and so once the seedling or the seed has used up all of the nutrition that is within the seed, they can't get anything out of this soil. This is just really to retain moisture close to the seed. So once the seed has germinated well enough and put roots down well enough, they can reach the nutritious soil at that like halfway mark. One of the problems with this stuff is that it does end up retaining moisture very, very well, but it starts out super, super dry, and so I have to pre-hydrate it in a bucket. Otherwise, it almost repels the moisture, and the seeds and soil just end up floating essentially, and that's not what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna put this bag in a bucket and add plenty of water. So I've got all the soil set in. I've tamped it down slightly just so I don't have any large air pockets in there. And I think pretty much everything is going to be planted at the same depth. The seeds are not very big, and so they're probably going to go about a 1/4 inch down. Another interesting way to start seeds, and I've seen Charles Dowding do this a whole lot, is to start with a bigger tray than you might think and broadcast the seeds out on top of the soil. Add a little bit of potting mix or seed starting mix to the top, moisten it, and then let them grow kind of just all together here. And then later on, when the seedlings get bigger, you can actually separate them out at that point into their own individual pots. This helps make the process a little faster and also helps conserve space. So I haven't done a lot of that in years past, but I plan on doing it more and more this year, and I have done that with the shallots this time. I actually think I've seen Jess with Roots and Refuge do that too. I think she's done it probably with more things than this, but tomatoes and peppers for sure. I've seen her do that. So this is about the extent of our indoor seed starting space, and as you can tell, I don't have space for much, but this has been more than sufficient for us in years past, and I think being able to use methods like this, I don't even know the name of this method for seed starting where you just sort of broadcast the seed and then separate it out later, that is really going to be a game changer for us, I think, until we can get a larger seed starting space, because you can start a whole bunch of seeds in a really small space. So these kinds of plants don't need light to germinate. Some seeds really do need some light to germinate. I know that calendula is one of them, and some lettuces require light to germinate. I just want to get myself in the habit of turning on the lights every day. They're going to get 12 hours of light every day and then 12 hours with no light. And what I have here, they're not specific grow lights. These are actually LED shop lights, but I did make sure that they had at least 3,000 lumens, so they put out enough energy to qualify as a grow light. this here is one of my La Mancha does, Elpis. Elpis is a really important goat to me. She's the only progeny I have out of our old buck Cash, who actually died of urinary calculi right around this time last year. So Elpis has been through kind of a lot. She's my goat that did have the meningeal or the brainworm earlier in the year, and she did make a pretty much full recovery. She still wobbles a little bit on her back end, but she's been through a lot, and she recently did hurt her hoof. And it was New Year's Eve when she hurt her hoof. And at that time I did clean it up. I actually used Vetricin wound spray, and I wrapped it just like I'm gonna do today, and put the boot on, and did a little bit more research of what I could do for her, because she is about 1 month bred, and I really don't like to do basically anything with them at all if I don't have to in their first at least 6 weeks of pregnancy. It's a delicate time, and I'd rather not risk the kids if I don't have to. If I have to, I will, because my main priority really is the doe. So being New Year's Eve, it was later in the evening when I noticed that she was bleeding. I mean, the vet wasn't open, and New Year's Day, the vet wasn't open, and it doesn't really matter, really, because I do know what to do here. But at this point in time, we do have the ability to purchase and keep on hand antibiotics, and that ability is not going to exist for livestock producers. I think it's June of this year. Over-the-counter antibiotics are going to be a thing of the past, which I do understand why they're doing it. They're trying to prevent misuse and overuse, and so I get it, but I also have a really hard time kind of coming to grips with that and what it might mean for our herd and other herds, because being able to buy a large bottle of penicillin for $30 that will treat many animals is doable. That's why we're able to have the size herd that we can have, and that's why we're able to do what we can do here. If I need to take an animal into the vet for every issue like this, it's gonna add up really fast, and I'm probably gonna be able to do less, which means that we'll be able to bless the community a lot less. And in situations like we had with Elpis on New Year's Eve, I mean, she probably had my vet after hours, vets on call and stuff. That's extremely expensive. So, oh, I know, baby. Good girl. So it just makes things a little bit more difficult, and a lot of me wonders what that can of worms is really going to open. So we get rid of the antibiotics for livestock producers. Where does that stop? Does that open up something else? Does that mean maybe in the future we won't have access to topical antimicrobial, something I'm about to spray on her foot right now? Will we lose access to dewormers? Because dewormers, they have major resistance problems, and so arguably that is probably just as important to give dewormers only when expressly necessary. And I'm not trying to make it happen where we lose our over-the-counter dewormers, but I feel like it gives a good excuse to also remove those, and I do worry that we're going to probably have to rely on vets to make calls for our herds pretty soon for many things that really just normally are routine. So it's really going to be hard to tell exactly what happened to her, but essentially she has a cut at the top of her hoof where it meets the skin, and it does extend downwards into the hoof wall. It looks awesome right now. You can barely tell that anything is wrong aside from the way that she's holding it, because the piece of hoof did reattach, but I'm trying to make her comfortable, and most importantly, I'm trying to keep it dry. One of my goat mentors and friends had encouraged me to do a topical wound spray or dip of her foot with chlorhexidine, and that's a really great antimicrobial topical thing that you can buy. I have gallons of it in my house. I actually have 2 gallons of it, but this is a really nice spray version. It's actually a udder spray, a teat spray. I got this on Caprine Supply online, and this is what I've been using to topically treat her hoof. Now that it's wet, you can kind of see the trajectory that the cut made. It goes along the top of the hoof line here and comes down, and it's a pretty decent gouge. See that? So hoof issues for goats, they can be a real ripple effect because they're ruminants. In order for the goat's rumen to function well, they really should be moving around a lot. And a goat who has a hurt hoof isn't really going to be moving around a lot. So it affects the functionality of their rumen, and when a goat's rumen shuts down, it can lead to bloat, and it's a domino effect and can be really bad. But so far, Elpis has been doing great. I noticed this on, like I said, the 31st. Today is the 2nd, so she's going to be getting some more antibiotics tonight. I am treating her with penicillin. I've got lots of it on hand for now, and it would be my suggestion to stock up on stuff like that until you can communicate with your vet and really figure out what your vet is going to be able to do for you as a livestock producer. So I called my vet this morning to tell her all about Elpis, make sure I was doing the right thing, and I asked her, I said, what's the plan? When they do take antibiotics off of the shelf, what do you want me to do? When I come in and I have issues like this, do I need to come in every time, or am I going to be able to order a whole bottle's worth of antibiotics from you and have you trust me that I'm going to use it in the right way? And she said she would trust me. Now, I don't know that every vet is going to be able to do that for every person. My vet will order me bottles of oxytocin if I need it because we have a relationship and she trusts me. So I feel really good about that. It makes me feel at peace. Plus, when I do need to take goats to the vet around here, it's literally only $45, and I get lots of free phone advice. So I feel like for us, visiting the vet isn't a huge deal, but to some people, $45 is a really big deal. And if you only have $45, it's like more comfortable to be able to go spend that on a bottle of penicillin and some wrapping supplies versus just the trip to the vet, and then you have to pay the vet for these kinds of things. And usually vets will only give you as much medicine as you need to treat that one animal that one time. So honestly, that is what I would plan for. So I do have to wrap her foot. I don't have great lighting in the barn, especially when I sit the way that I have to sit to get her foot wrapped, but I'll do my best. She's not interested in eating anymore because she knows. Oh, I feel so bad. We've had goats that I've had to treat broken legs before, and this place, this milking stand, is supposed to be where good things happen. They come onto the milking stand and get treats, and they get pets, and they get love. When they're hurt, this is also where I kind of have to have them. It keeps their head still, but it also kind of makes the milk stand a place where they don't want to be. And for my dairy animals, that's not really what I want to perpetuate. I want her to be like happy to jump up on the milk stand, and this doesn't help. This does not help at all. So we're gonna have some work to do after she's all healed up to get her used to the milk stand again, to get her loving the milk stand again. Because if I have anything to say about it, she's going to be milking for me this springtime. Right? You're doing good. Everything looks good. It feels good. It's not hot. It smells good, so it's not getting nasty. You want to use all of your senses when you're caring for your animals so that you can pick up on things when they change and act on them quickly. She's got the boot on. Really, the whole purpose of the boot is to keep things dry. We're actually under a flood advisory for the weather that we're going to be getting later. I think if we allowed that wound to get wet, it would just be more likely to harbor infection. So we're going to avoid that by putting on the boot. So from what I've been told, the penicillin that she's on, it shouldn't hurt the babies. And I did give penicillin to an early pregnant doe last season. So some of you may remember Idolin broke her leg 2 weeks after she was bred last fall, and with a broken leg, and it did break the skin, the babies were the least of my concern. So I gave her whatever she needed, and if the babies didn't make it, then the babies didn't make it. The doe is my first priority. She did deliver a healthy baby, so I am comfortable giving Elpis penicillin because it shouldn't affect her kids at all. Come on. How are you doing, ma'am? It is your due date. So speaking of Idolin, here she is again, heavily pregnant. Today is her due date. Calamity, no. It's not the Calamity show. Mistakes were made. Rory's gonna get in my lap. But right here, this is Idolin. Today is her due date, according to the breeding that I saw. So she was with the buck for quite a few weeks, and there's a good chance that he got her a little bit later. So her udder has been developing, being eaten presently, thank you. Her udder has been developing. She's looking like she's blooming on her back end, if you know what I mean. And I can start to feel that her ligaments are getting a little bit softer, but I don't think today is gonna be the day. So her mama, very classically, will go a week overdue from breedings that she didn't have any other option but to be bred on the day that I saw her bred, and she will go 10 days late. Why are we doing this? Holy crap, that hurts. It wouldn't shock me if Idolin either did that, went a little bit late like her mama does, or if she ended up being bred on a little bit later cycle. But she's definitely got some babies on board. We hope, no ma'am. We hope more than one this time, but we're gonna have to see. Can I feel your ligaments? They're there. They are getting like more kind of sunken in. They're less tight, but it's not feeling like she's gonna have them in the next day or so. Which is good because the storm is rolling in tonight, and I really don't want to be in the barn in the middle of that. Crud. So when you have your hands in your does as often as I do, you can tell when something's different. And oh, darn it. Like, it is her due date, so I should have expected this, but I think she is putting some more milk in her udder, so I really need to be watching her closely. I'm gonna have the baby monitor on her, so hopefully we can video the birth. Stay tuned.